Jaya, Jaya, Jaya Radha, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunda Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunda Bihari. Gopijana Malabha Girivardhagoti Gopijana Malabha Girivardhagoti Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Banachare Yamuna Tera Banachare Jai Hurad Humadhava Kunda Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Malabha Girivardhagoti Gopijana Balabha Girivardhagoti Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachyahuti Yamuna Tira Banachyahuti Jayarandho Madhava Kunjavihahuti Jai Hurad Madhava Kunjavihahuti Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya All Suttara Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Adanta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopikapanath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravati Pachani Nivashesha Shunyavati Paschata Deja Charni. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 37th chapter, text 8. What's that? Thank you. That's enough. This is a big one. This is a big one. I got a big one. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tad Dehataha Kartika Palopamad Vyasor Apakrishya Bhujam Maha Bhujaha Avismito Yatna Hatarikaha Surahai Pasuna Varshar Varshadbir Iditaha Tadeyata Karkatika Palopamad Vyasora Pakrisha Bhujam Mahabhujaha Avismito Yatna Hatharika Surai Prasuna Varshar Varshad Bir Iditaka Tadehata Kartatika Palopamad Vyasora Pakrisha Bhujam Mahabhujaha Avismito yatna hatari kasurai. Prasunavarshar vashit viriditaha. Tadehata karkatika palopamad. Vyasora pakrisha bhujam mahabhujaha. Avismito yatna hatar kasurai. Prasunavarshar vashid viriditaha. All right. Tat Tehataha, from Keshi's body. Karkatika Pala, a Kartika fruit. Apamat, which resembled. Vyasaho, from which the vital airs had departed. Apakrisha, withdrawing. Bhujam, his arm. Mahabhujaha, the mighty armed Lord. Avismitaha, without undue pride. Ayatna, without effort. Hata, having killed. Arikaha, his enemy. Surai, by the demigods. Prasuna, of flowers. Varshahe, with downpours. Varshadbihi, who were raining upon him. Iditaha, worshipped. Translation: the mighty armed Krishna withdrew his arm from Keshi's body, which now appeared like a long karkatika fruit. Without the least display of pride at having so effortlessly killed his enemy, the Lord accepted the demigod's worship in the form of flowers rained down from above. You can repeat: the mighty armed Krishna withdrew his arm from Keshi's body, which now appeared like a long karkatika fruit. Without the least display of pride, at having so effortlessly killed his enemy, the Lord accepted the demigod's worship in the form of flowers rained down from above. So there's no purport by the followers of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, so we're going to read Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary, and then we'll speak a little bit. Keshi's body burst like an overripe melon. In spite of killing the big demon, Krishna was not proud, since he did it very easily. The Deva sprinkled flowers and also water to relieve Krishna of fatigue. So Jiva Goswami. The analogy with the karakatika fruit is described in the Vishnu Purana. Dvipade prishta pucharda shavanai kakshi nasike keshinaste dvidabute sakale dve virejatahu. Keshi's body was split into two parts, each with 2 feet, half a back and tail, 1 ear, 1 eye, and 1 nostril. Though he had effortlessly killed the enemy, Krishna did not feel pride mixed with astonishment, thinking, I have killed him. Or having killed the enemy, he continually smiled. Avigata smita avisnita, since he killed the demon without effort. Parashara says, Ana yasta tanu vasto hasamstatraiva samstitaha. Without fatigue and in good health, Krishna stood and smiled. Having showered flowers, the Devatas showered many more flowers. Another version has ayatna hatarir utsmayahi. He who killed the demon without effort was worshipped by smiling Devatas. Parashar describes what happened after this. Tato gopyascha hate keshane vismitaha tushtuvu pundari kaksham anuraga manoramam. When Kesha was killed, the cowards and gopis were astonished. They praised lotus-eyed Krishna, attractive with anuraga. Vaishampayana says, Tam hatam keshinam drishva gopa gopastriyas chata babu vur mudita sarve hata vigna hata klamaha damodaram chashrimantam tastanam yata vayaha abhyananda priyar vakyai pujayanta puna punaha. Seeing Keshi dead, the cowards and their wives were overjoyed. They were free from all obstacles and fatigue. They welcomed beautiful Krishna according to age and place with pleasing words and worshipped him again and again. And Sanatana Goswami's commentary is more or less the same. So, actually I should go back and read the verse again, just because that's the right procedure. Give me a second. Okay. Taddayata karkatika palopamad yasora pakrisha bhujam mahabhujaha avismato yatna hatarika surai prasunavarshai rashadbir iditehaha. So, Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Un Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So in this particular pastime, we are seeing the nature of Krishna's transcendental body, as we find from the Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Panamas Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karnam. And the Krishna has a Satchidananda Vigraha body which is not subject to the limitations which our bodies have. I mean, I cannot expand my body or extend my hand. It's just not going to happen like that. And we find in many pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he does exhibit this supernatural or transcendental nature or spiritual nature of his transcendental body, which is non-different from himself. Our bodies are different from ourselves. And I'm going to cite some of these different stories. So let's talk about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exhibiting his ecstasies and he would escape from the Gambhira at night, one night he escaped and he entered into the sea. And when he entered into the sea, of course the devotees didn't know where he was, and they were looking up and down the shore to find Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And finally, they found the fisherman, and the fisherman was basically chanting Krishna's names. And they said, "Have you seen Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?" And he said, "No, I've seen a ghost." And I touched this ghost, and the ghost, and I started chanting this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and I couldn't stop, and I'm ghostly haunted. And Swarup Damodar Goswami actually slapped him at that point, and he said, I can get rid of ghosts. I'm a ghostbuster. And tell me where this body is, where this ghost is. And he took him to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's limbs were extended tremendously. And the devotees started chanting Hare Krishna. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regained his normal external appearance at that particular point. So there's one story about how the Lord's body is not subjected to the rules and regulations of material nature. Another story of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes is when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also left, and he was with the cows from Tailanga, and he was lying there, and his limbs had actually shrunk up into his body at that point. And then again, the devotees chanted the holy name, and then limbs of Lord Chaitanya came out. I mean, there's other stories too. There's the universal form of Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter, we find that Arjuna wants to see how Krishna enters into all the universes, the universal form, and then Krishna manifests this universal form. And then, of course, Arjuna sees all the different soldiers entering into the mouths of the universal form. And then Arjuna says, I want to see your form as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Krishna manifests his four-arm form to Arjuna, and then Krishna manifests the two-arm form. So, that it shows that Krishna can do anything with his transcendental body. And of course, there's the various incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We all know that Dvaita Chuta Nadi Rananta Rupa Majam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha, that there's one God, and he's always the same person. Dvaita Chuta, he's infallible. Ananta Rupam, he has unlimited forms. And all those forms are the same transcendental body of Jopi Samhavyatma Bhutanam Ishropi Shram. Prakratim Shramadistaya Sambhavami Atmamaya. Krishna says he comes and he's always in the same transcendental, he is his transcendental body. He's not different from his transcendental body. So you have Lord Nrsingadev, you have Kurma, you have Matsya, Angani Yasha Shikalen, Triyadri Timanti. Krishna can do anything with any one of his senses that he wants to do. He can eat, like Prabhupada said, he can eat with his eyes, he can eat with his ears. We can only eat with our mouth. And so, then in Krishna's pastimes, there's the Aghasura demon, where Krishna manifested himself, made himself so big that he choked the demon. Trinavarta demon, where Krishna made himself so heavy that he caused the demon to fall to the ground. Govardhan, where Krishna manifested himself as a gigantic form and ate all the offerings, and there wasn't anything left, and he was asking for more, anyor, and all they could do was give him a tulsi leaf, and then he was satisfied. There's the incarnation of Vamanadev, where Krishna looked like a small dwarf brahmana, and then he expanded himself, his step, Trivikram, to cover the whole earth planet, the whole universe. kicked a hole in the universe. I mean, the same transcendental body, Krishna's doing all these things with it. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's incredible. How can we understand these things? Krishna dancing with it, expanding himself to dance with the gopis, and then finally the story. I'm sure there's a lot more stories too, but another story is when Krishna entered the Mithila, and he had two devotees there that he wanted to give association to. One was a Brahmin, Shrutadeva, and the other one was Bahulashva, the king. So he just divided himself in two. And even the sages that were with Krishna, because they were in transcendental bodies too, or they were yogis at least, they actually appeared in both places too. So God is amazing. I mean, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. The other thing I wanted to talk about was what this pastime represents according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They talked about how the different demons that were killed by Krishna represent different anarthas. And this particular anartha is quite interesting. I was thinking, being a little introspective when I heard about this particular anartha. Because in the case of Keshi, there's several different explanations of the anartha that Keshi represents. As feeling that I'm a great devotee, a spiritual master, a teacher, I know everything. And there's some examples of that too. But we're going to talk about the other anarthas they're represented by Keshi. In Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Prakrita Rasa Sata Dushane, which is a beautiful book, talking about how one has to be qualified in order to taste the highest rasas to be absorbed. He talks about the prerequisites, basically, and then the danger of thinking one is qualified when one is actually not qualified. It's an amazing book. I suggest that you all read it. He says, the highest devotee, who is like a king among the Rasikas, expert in relishing devotional he says this in relationship to Keshi, expert in relishing devotional mellows, never thinks that he has disciples. The students of such a Rasika, however, never give up the mood of being disciples of this exalted devotee. Also, it's mentioned as far as the anarthas that are connected with Keshi, false ego, attachment to wealth, and one's accomplishments in life. Krishna Samhita gives some more explanations. That's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wonderful exposition. Vanity of political ambition. Also, there's another quote from Krishna Samhita directly about Keshi. Keshi, a demon in the form of a horse, personifies the practitioner's conception of being more expert than others in devotional service. When he comes to Braj, he creates a great disturbance. This is interesting. So someone who posits himself or herself as being more advanced than they actually are, create a disturbance amongst the devotees, just like Keshi created a disturbance amongst the devotees. Such an interesting quote. When he comes to Braj, he says he creates a great disturbance. There's more. As a Vaishnava gradually begins proclaiming his own superiority, a mentality of disrespect for the Lord arises, and the devotee falls from his position. And also I may say that a mentality of disrespect for the other devotees and actually for one's spiritual master. One thinks that one knows more than the spiritual master. One becomes expert, for example, in different subjects like Sanskrit or Bengali. And we've seen, other than a few devotees, that when people became very expert in these particular language skills, they actually fell down from devotional service. There was one of my godbrothers in, I don't want to mention his name, but anyway, he was in Los Angeles. He was editing Srila Prabhupada's books, expert in Bengali. And he thought he knew more than Prabhupada. Sometimes the Sanskrit department is considered to be like a danger zone for people, because they actually think they know more than Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada, they will criticize Prabhupada and they say that, oh, this should be the translation rather than that. But Prabhupada was translating in a purported form, according to the vision of the acharyas. Prabhupada was not so concerned with the literal translation, but with the actual meaning behind a particular verse. And sometimes devotees will think, they can change what Prabhupada said because they know better than Prabhupada. So Vaishnava gradually proclaims his own superiority. The mentality of disrespect for the Lord arises, and the devotee falls from his position. Therefore, it is most important to prevent this evil mentality from entering the heart. Even if one is expert in devotional service, a Vaishnava will never give up the quality of humility. If one does so, there is a need for killing Keshi. Wow, what a quote. So, let's talk about this anarthas, or anarthas in general, because this particular type of anartha that Keshi represents comes from actual devotional service. According to the acharyas, anarthas have 4 different sources. One, of course, is the sin. I mean, that's obvious. Anarthas come from sin. That if you break the regulator principles, anarthas means the manifestation of things like kama, krodha, mada, matsarya, bharya, bhaya. Lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy. How many times do we actually look at a devotee and think, I'm envious of him, or we try to put him down, he may be a Supreme Court judge, but he's not getting any salary, as Prabhupada said. That Prabhupada gave that example as far as envy, that someone's friend was appointed to be a Supreme Court judge. He said that he may be a court judge, but he's not getting any salary. In other words, they just appointed him because he's not taking any money. Otherwise, they would have appointed someone actually qualified. So, of course, lust, trying to enjoy someone, seeing someone, trying to exploit lust, anger. Just being angry because one's frustrated and try to enjoy the objects of one's desires, rather than understanding, Krishna wants one to have something, he'll have it, and if Krishna doesn't, then you won't have it. Greed, possessing different material objects, less anger, greed. Illusion, thinking oneself as the body. And anyway, so these anarthas manifest, or let's say, or we were talking about one cause is the sins that one commits. Then another cause is the pious activities, or karma, vikarma, karma. So pious activities cause one to be entangled, first of all, thinking oneself the doer. Secondly, one becomes attached to the mode of goodness, according to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, that the mode of goodness gives you happiness. We all want that sort of happiness, but one becomes attached to that sort of happiness. Just like sometimes in the morning I'd look out at the sky and see it's very beautiful and the birds are chirping, chirp, 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 chirp. And it's, just appreciating Krishna. Not appreciating Krishna, unfortunately. Appreciating just the beauty of this material world without any connection to Krishna. And then I forget Krishna. So pious activities cause you to forget, but mundane pious activities cause you to forget Krishna. Of course, we should cultivate the mode of goodness, but at the same time, not be attached or try to enjoy the mode of goodness. It's very dangerous. So anyway, that causes anarthas. Another cause, of course, is offenses against devotees. And the final cause is devotional service, the byproducts of bhakti. Because as you perform devotional service, then, people start to admire you, or you start to think, I know so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita, how many verses do you know, like that? And then there's so many different ways that our false pride rises up. And as a result of that, we get symptoms of anarthas, which are weakness of heart, enviousness, fault-finding. We become attached to material objects, comforts, and even liberation. And then we forget our spiritual identity, which is what? Jivera Swarupahoy, Nitya Krishna Das, that we're servants. We forget that we're 1/10,000th the tip of the hair, which is actually no material dimension at all. We forget that we're insignificant. Anyway, and then you become attached to subjects unfavorable to bhakti. So, what examples do we have of people succumbing like that in our literature? In the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have this Keshava Kashmiri. Keshava Kashmiri, of course, was one of these conquering pandits that they would go around. Actually, he was a god. He was worshiping a goddess Lakshmi. I was listening to a class of Prabhupada talking about Saraswati, goddess Saraswati. He was worshiping goddess Saraswati, and goddess Saraswati had told him, that nobody could conquer you. And so he was thinking like that, and basically no one could conquer him until he came to talk to Nimai Pandit. And Nimai Pandit asked him to compose 100 verses in glorification of the Ganges. And it's described like the wind. He composed these 100 verses, very, very quickly by the mercy of Goddess Saraswati. And then Nimai Pandit, that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was able to show some fault in one of the verses. And he became cut down like that. And of course, he later on surrendered to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But this was pride, the same thing that we're mentioning before, the pride due to one's erudition, knowledge, wasn't his devotional status. But then as far as devotional status and understanding devotional devotional process, we have the example of Balabhabata from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Balabhabata was very, very educated, very, very intelligent. And he challenged, in his words, he actually challenged the authority of Sridhar Swami, the original commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he went to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that I have actually, basically shown some fault in Sridhar Swami's commentary. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, basically acting the same as Krishna did with the Keshi demon, sticking his hand into the Keshi demon's, his arm into the Keshi demon's mouth and killing him, he did the same thing with Balabhabata, not his hand, of course, but not literally, that he cut down the pride of Balabhabata, saying that Balabhabata, you are like a prostitute because you're not accepting the Swami. So we see that when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt with people who had the same anarthas that Keshi represents, he was actually dealing with them in a different way. He didn't kill them like Krishna killed them. Even Jagai and Madai, of course, he didn't kill them. He saved Jagai and Madai. So this is Lord Chaitanya's mercy that we may have these anarthas and we may be thinking the same as Keshi was thinking. We should try to understand that we have, at least myself, not accusing anyone else, that we all have a little Keshi in our hearts or a big Keshi in our hearts. And then pray for the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if we are sincere, will actually help us overcome the demoniac tendency of false pride due to thinking that we know so much or we're a great spiritual personality or we've acquired so much in this world. So anyway, we have Keshi in our hearts, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will help us kill the demon Keshi. So any questions or comments about these points?
I'd like to say that.
Yeah.
There's a philosopher, Roman Spanish philosopher, Seneca.
Yeah, Seneca.
I only know that I know nothing, and it
Yes.
And the more a person makes progress, the more he realizes how little progress one has made.
Yes, that's true.
And
And
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, the way he speaks, the eternal associate, the Supreme Lord, how he talks about being intangibly linking all these material things in his life and having
yeah.
worship the Supreme Lord and all that.
So Gopinath Mamanaveda Nashuno Vishaya Durjana. He says, Gopinath, I'm a materialistic rascal. Please take this sinner weeping and weeping to your lotus feet. And so there's that great humility. And one way we can deal with this keshi that's in our hearts is by serving others. Because generally we think we're so great that everyone should be serving us. But we should render some menial service to the Vaishnavas. And in this way we can conquer this demon that's in our hearts. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mother Urmila.
But then when we're rendering menial service, we think that we're such a great devotee because we're rendering
Yeah, that's it. You know, it has to be done with the right attitude. That I'm really great, you know, I'm really humble. You know, we have to be careful of any material skill that we have, whether it's language skills, whether it's, you know, even strength, whether it's some beauty, whether it's realization, and that's not material, but even spiritual things that we have. We have to be very, very careful not to think that we're the proprietors of those things. These things are given by Krishna. As Prabhupada's father said to Srila Prabhupada, that Krishna has 10 hands. With those 10 hands and 10 arms, he can, if you want to keep something, you won't be able to keep something. If you want to keep from getting something, you won't be able to keep from getting something. In other words, Krishna will give you those things. So, in other words, that doesn't only refer to material goods, but that refers to, you know, intelligence. Intelligence and spiritual strength, these are all coming from Krishna, you know, and the association of devotees, yes.
Increasingly, we've seen in our devotee sanghas this tendency to say, you know, I know better than Srila Prabhupada, or I know better than Bhaktivinoda. There's an increasing tendency, and it's across the spectrum of like,
Yeah,
you know, liberal and conservative.
that's true.
It's not it's not just on one place. It's everywhere. And how do we respond to these things? Because they're
I would just stay away from the people who talk like that. I mean, there's no question. I mean, it's actually quite dangerous. It's an offense against Srila Prabhupada, an offense against the acharyas, to say that, you know, I know more than Prabhupada. Like you're talking about the conservatives and the liberals. It's really interesting. That, yeah, both of them.
it's on the full.
Yeah, it's all over the place, you know. Conservatives, they definitely want to bring in a lot of different rituals and everything like that Prabhupada never brought in. And thinking that, you know, Prabhupada would have done that if he could have done it, or Prabhupada didn't know. You know, they have so many things that they say, and it's quite offensive. I just avoid them.
You know, this Albert Einstein has many funny and really wise sayings.
Hmm.
One of them is that a normal person in dealing with a problem deals with the problem somehow. An intelligent person solves the problem, and a wise person stays away.
Wise person stays away from problems.
Maharaj, when you were talking about the earlier pastime of Lord Chaitanya withdrawing, we have such a sweet pastime of Lord Jagannath.
Yeah.
With the withdrawal.
Oh, yeah.
of the soul.
Yeah, when Lord Jagannath, I mean, there's a story Gaur Govinda Maharaj told. When Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Baladev heard about their pastimes, or Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, their arms shrunk up like that.
That's my belief.
That's the Jagannath pastime that they had Subhadra guarding the door, and the wives of Krishna were hearing about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And Subhadra listened, and her arm shrunk up. Balaram listened, his arm shrunk up. And Krishna listened, his arm shrunk up. And the eyes too. The eyes became like this. Oh, another time Krishna exhibit, I forgot about this particular pastime where Krishna's hand became very long, is when there was this lizard in the well.
That was also his left hand.
I don't remember. Anyway, he extended his hand, and his hand became so long, nobody could reach it. This was King Nriga, of course, who had made a great offense by giving the same cow away twice.
What's the name of the book by Bhakti?
Right, Prakrita Dushana Sata, or something like that. Yeah, it's a really it's a lot of different verses about the danger of considering oneself more advanced than one is, and then thinking one can perform bhakti at a higher level than they're actually qualified for. Jai Shri Shri Radhagolokananda ki jai. Govinda Adi Purusham Tamara.
Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Sundaram Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Andani Asa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Vipan Vikayanti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam
Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham.
No. Namo Vishnu Pachaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Vimate Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namine Srimate Bhaktivedanta Namaste Radhe Gaur Bhaktavan Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Srivasadi Gaurata Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Srivasadi Gaurata Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha, Radha Jai Sri Radha. Hey, Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravatikacharya, all Sutera Sutashi Shimad. His Divine Grace Sabaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadwaita Gadadha. Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kund Radha Kunda. Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Mathuranam Ki Jai. Jagadata Swami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vasaya Budale Shrimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Stay says what they would name it says anybody. Paschata Deja Tarni. Okay, Shri Shastika.
Thank you. Etadrishita vakripa bhagavan mamapi dordaivam idrishami hajjanina nuraga trinadapi sunichena tarorapi suhishuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari nadanam najanam